Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin momentarily. Please take your seats. Again, our program will begin momentarily. Please take your seats. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our Master of Ceremonies for A Day for Prevention, the Managing Director of the Office of Recovery Reinvented, Jenny Olson.
Good morning! Yes. Good morning. Thank you, all of North Dakota, and welcome to A Day for Prevention. An entire day focused on understanding, engaging, and most importantly, acting in this very important topic. It's kind of like, I like to think about the Final Four or the Stanley Cup or the World Series of prevention, something we have never done before in our state, and we are bringing together experts from across the country, but also some of the best and brightest locally right here in North Dakota. And even more importantly than that, a whole community of people that care. And that is the most critical component. So we have a very exciting day for you ahead. The group that brought all of this together really spans, what we refer to as the whole of government. From the judicial, legislative, and executive branches, groups came together to come and plan what is it going to take? What kind of conversations are we going to have to move forward as a state on this topic? So, thank you for all of that. You'll notice we've got a hashtag here on the bottom of the screen, hashtag Day for Prevention. There is going to be so much cool stuff happening today, it would be selfish to keep it all to ourselves. So, feel free to use your social media feeds, hashtag Day for Prevention, and share all of the cool learning and insights and conversations that we're going to have today. And on top of that, I promise that we will have some fun today. I'll give you some reasons to post things on social media. They may not be what the planning committee intended, but they will be reasons for you to post on social media. In preparation for today, I watched old tapes of Ellen DeGeneres hosting the Oscars. And this morning, I was blaring the Greatest Showman soundtrack in my room. And who knows? Who knows where the day's going to take us? So, with that, thank you for participating, North Dakota. Not only do we have all the people here in the room, here at the beautiful Bismarck Energy Center, but we also have a live stream going. So we actually have viewing parties happening all across the state, organized in communities across the state. So hello to all of you that are viewing from your own communities. Now you can pretend you're on Ellen DeGeneres and you can do a shout out, pretend you're Skyping live. Those communities are in Dickinson, Minot, Williston, Rolla, Devils Lake, Jamestown, Valley City, Grand Forks, and Fargo. So, yes. And in addition to that, we have individuals in their homes and at work that are just viewing on their own via the live stream. So we are sharing this with the entire state, truly. For For those of you who are watching at home or at work, be sure to sign up at recoveryreinvented.com because we are going to be sharing these resources. We're going to be sending things out, and we need to know how to share those things with you. So be sure you sign up at recoveryreinvented.com so we can get all that information to you. The rest of you, we already know how to get a hold of you. So, thank you. Everyone here and virtually has made a choice to invest your time and energy, and more importantly, to care and dedicate your time to this very important topic today. So we thank you for that. You know, the governor is always talking about how for us to reach our potential as a state, we need to invest in continuous learning on every dimension, every single one of us, and that is what I love about today, continuous learning. So very grateful for that. A little preview about the day. There's going to be really cool content here on stage, but also we're going to have a knowledge cafe down the hall over the lunch hour, tables and experts of various different resources and organizations that are at your disposal as citizens of North Dakota. So you can, over the lunch hour, dig deeper, make some connections, match up the needs of your community with the resources that already exist and are at your disposal. So be watching for the Knowledge Cafe at lunch and take advantage of that. And because the content is so good, there is some continuing education credits available. If that is you, be sure you sign up outside in the hallway or at your virtual learning center. Whether it's counseling, addiction counselors, peace officers, a whole variety of individuals can earn credit for today. So I'm anxious to get our first speaker up here, but a little bit of background of how we got here today with this event. Some of you may know we had a Recovery Reinvented event for the very first time this fall. It was a reflection of the dedication and commitment our governor and First Lady have to the very important topic, and it was a huge success. The response from the community in the state was overwhelming, and frankly, the voice said, we need to do more, and we need to talk about more than recovery. We need to talk about prevention, and we love what we experienced, and that's what today is. Today is a response to that. It is more, what people have been asking for, and so once again, thank you to the Governor and First Lady for that commitment and helping us get to this point today. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, speaking of our first speaker, this is the first time that I get to introduce our esteemed governor, and so I'm going to cherish this opportunity. I might not have this opportunity again. There's a lot of things in the governor's bio and lots of experiences that would be really fun to talk about, but most of you have probably heard all of that before. The one thing that nobody has probably heard before is a story from about 20 years ago. I was a 20-year-old intern, and I was at a large conference center in a dark room with thousands of other people. Didn't know what was going on, 20-year-old intern, and this man got up on stage and starts talking, kind of a long time, and I remember leaving that event, and the first thing I did is I rushed back to my dorm room, and on an old phone, I called home to my dad. And I remember just jibber-jabbering to my father, like, Dad, I just heard this guy talk. There was a bunch of crazy stories from history that I had never heard before and didn't make sense until he started connecting the dots and sharing all these ideas, and it was fascinating. And Dad, this guy, you would not believe how many facts and figures and data points one person could possibly remember. Like, it was amazing. And Dad, you know, all I remember from that experience 20 years ago was feeling so inspired. And that's, I think, it was that energy and that inspiration that caused me to rush home and pick up the phone and call my dad, of all people. And that's a feeling I have not forgotten. And that is why I love the opportunity to work with the governor and listen to the insights and the learning on any topic, but especially this one, around prevention addiction, recovery, those things that are of the utmost importance. So I have 3 little girls at home. I am grateful for the governors and the First Lady and the Lieutenant Governor's commitment to this really important topic, because they are absolutely relentless, constantly pushing the ideas, the conversation. Let's do more. We can do more. Let's innovate. Let's iterate. And that's what comes to mind when I think of them, the relentless pursuit of making things better. And so I am thrilled to be introducing our governor for the very first time, myself. Welcome our governor, Doug Burgum, to the stage.
Thank you, Jenny. Fun story. I hadn't heard that one before, but thank you for sharing that. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We got so many people here. We have standing room only, and I know maybe some of these people are trying to get your steps in and trying to do whatever. We got people standing along the walls, but if you're not someone who wants to stand up for the next segment, if there's an open chair next to you, raise your hand. There's an open chair. I know it looks like it's filled, but look at this. There's all kinds of people who love to have someone sitting by them. So go ahead and jump right in if you want to sit down. Otherwise, and if you're sitting down and you want to stand up, you can do that too. We're very flexible today. But on behalf of the First Lady, on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Brent Sanford, I want to say welcome to all of you that are here live today in Bismarck, all of you that are watching live across the state at our viewing sites, those people that are watching live streaming in. We're super grateful for you to take the most important thing you have, which is your time and your presence, and share it today as part of this community of people who care about this important problem. One of the things that Brent and Catherine and I have really come to understand about the jobs that we're in is that, and why we're so grateful and honored to have the chance to serve North Dakotans every day, is because we know that in the roles that we're in, that every single day we can make a difference in people's lives. And today, you have that same opportunity by being here. You're participating in this. You also have an opportunity to make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And I think, like all of you, I think we're all here together because we love the state, we love the people in it, and we know that we can do better. And across our time in office, which has been a relatively short time, the First Lady and I and Brent have met so many passionate North Dakotans, so many people that care so deeply about the state. And in those travels and those meetings, we're also so grateful that people have come to us and shared with us their struggles. Often these struggles that may be hidden from their communities, from their workplace, but they're sharing those stories with us. They're having the courage to come out and talk about the challenges that a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, a parent may have had with the issues of behavioral health and addiction. And the fact that they've had the courage to come forward and share that has helped us understand just how large this issue is, just how many people it's impacting in our state. And so we're grateful to all of those people that have come forward with courage to talk, and we're grateful for all the communities that have welcomed us across the state, and we're grateful that so many communities are involved today, and we're going to be hearing from some of them. I do want to also share my gratitude because there's a lot of people that have brought us to where we are today to be able to have this event, and a number of them are here today. The legislators who've been working on this issue in some case, for decades. We've got community leaders, we've got nonprofits, we've got foundations, we have healthcare organizations at all levels, from county health all the way up. We have professionals, we have advocates, we have faith-based organizations that know that they can make a difference. This is an issue that touches K through 12, and it touches higher education, and they're represented here as well. We've got peace officers and law enforcement here from across the state. And also, as Jenny talked about, the whole of government, because we've got the entire cabinet administration of the Burgum-Sanford administration is participating in this, and I know that there's lots of people that are here today. We've got leaders. I see our Adjutant General, General Dorman is here, Sean Riley, who leads IT, Mylyn Tufty from leads the Department of Health, Chris Jones, who leads Human Services, is here, Jody Euchre, our Chief Operating Officer, Jody Hansen, the Chief Administrative Officer, and I'm sure there's many, many more that I'm missing that are sprinkled around the room. But we do have, every cabinet agency has got a role to play in this. Leanne Birch, who leads Department of Corrections, is playing a very big role. Anyway, it's a great thing. And then we also want to call out, and the thing when we talk about K through 12, here we are at Bismarck State. I know we've got President Larry Scogan is here. Larry, thank you for being with us today. And of course, this wouldn't be possible without great staff work from the Governor's Office, the First Lady's Office, the Office of Recovery Reinvented, and then really leading the charge on this, of course, is the behavioral health team from Human Services. So again, Pam Sagnas, Laura Anderson, and the entire team that's worked so hard to put this on. But let's give all of those people a hand for bringing us to where we are today. I think it's also when we're pulling these things together, whether it's Recovery Reinvented, Day for Prevention, the work that we're doing. As you know, we have been trying to figure out a way to do private-public partnerships to extend the sometimes scarce tax dollars that we have even further. And so we're very fortunate to have our sponsors today that have helped make this happen. And in addition to the sponsors, private sector partners, in this case Blue Cross Blue Shield in North Dakota and Sanford Health, are helping to pick up a big portion of the costs related to today, including, among other things, those that are here live, they're buying your lunch. So let's give these sponsors a big hand for that. And then, of course, I've already given a shout out to our great behavioral health team, who is leveraging dollars from SAMHSA, who is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. That's a big acronym, but there are federal dollars that flow to our state, and we're able to use that as a block grant to try to drive those dollars towards these important parts of what we're doing related to behavioral health. So again, let's hear it for Department of Human Services for all the work that they're doing. Our administration has come together and said, hey, we need to have a purpose in what we do. We all sat down and said, look, there's almost 16,000 people that work for the state of North Dakota. What are some unifying things that bring that entire group together? Because people get into state government for a reason. They get into government because they want to make a difference. And we said, how could we boil that down to 6 really powerful words? And the words that we've come up with in our administration is empower people, improve lives, and inspire success. And I think that you're going to see that, well, we have that as our purpose and mission that we get up and try to do every day across all of our agencies. You're certainly going to see some of that here today, and you're going to hear it from the amazing set of speakers we have. You're going to hear it in the announcements we make, and you're going to hear it in the recognition that we give, that we're all here today, and we include you in that and everybody listening, that today we have a chance to empower people, we have a chance to improve lives, and we have an opportunity to inspire success. And Teddy Roosevelt once said, the great prize in life is the opportunity to work hard at work worth doing. Working on prevention, that's work worth doing. So thank you again for all being here. We have 5 strategic initiatives that we're trying to drive across our state. And this is in addition to all the things that government has to get up and do every day. We got to plow the roads. We got to educate people. We got to deliver health care. We got to run parks and recreation, do law enforcement. There's a myriad number of things that government has to do, and a lot of that work happens often within the silos of agencies. But when we talk about our 5 strategic initiatives, from reinventing government, behavioral health and addiction, tribal engagement, transforming education, and our Main Street initiative, these initiatives cut across every agency. So when we're talking about behavioral health and addiction, it touches every agency in the state. And it also touches the other strategic initiatives, because certainly one of the things we know from the time and investment that we've made engaging with our sovereign governments and nation-to-nation relations with the tribal nations within our borders who are also North Dakota citizens, use North Dakota services, drive on North Dakota roads, attend North Dakota schools. When we're engaging with them in a nation-to-nation basis, one of the things that comes up at the top of the list is issues around behavioral health and addiction and services or the lack of service in those areas. When we're out visiting communities, and Brent and I have been now I think to 16 or 17 community visits where we're spent a half a day or a day in a community talking about how they can improve the vibrancy and the health of their communities, how they can work on workforce attraction, how they can get more people back into the workforce, how they can have smarter infrastructure. Every time that we're in one of those communities, one of the things that's at the top of the list is behavioral health, addiction, lack of resources in this area. And of course, it's geographically spread. We got bigger issues in the West than we do in the East in terms of the availability of healthcare providers. And that's why some of the new ideas that are emerging, including things that have been brought up through Recovery Reinvented about peer-to-peer and recovery community organizations are important to fill those gaps where we don't have professionals. In terms of education, yeah, we want to transform education. You take a look at K through 12 numbers in our state and you say, hey, here's an issue. We have kids dropping out. Is that something that's wrong with the school? Let's drill in a little further. Many of those kids that are dropping out are coming from homes that have been ravaged by addiction and behavioral health issues. And when we talk about reinventing government, as I said, every agency, we sat down with every agency when we did strategic reviews coming into this thing. There's only 2 agencies out of almost 20 that we were meeting with that have a line item in their budget that says something related to behavioral health and addiction. Human Services has dollars, mostly for treatment. We have in the health department, there's a line item for things around prevention. But this issue touches every agency we have, every agency. Colonel Gerhardt is here, who leads our highway patrol. What do you think they spend their time on interdiction related to drugs, DUIs, fatalities on the road, all related to the issues of addiction? How about our law enforcement people that work in game and fish? Do they run into addiction issues? Absolutely. How about Parks and Rec? Issues within our parks with our park rangers who are badged law enforcement. Domestic disturbance, crime in our parks related to addiction. It touches every agency that we have in our state. We do not know the cost of this issue to our state. We're going to try to find out. I've talked to other governors around the country. No state government understands the high cost of addiction that it has. But it's unmeasured, but it's huge, and we need to start taking a different approach to it. And one of the things that we need to start understanding is just even our approach. We have had in our country an approach towards addiction that's lasted almost 70 years. And that approach has been that addiction is a moral failing, and therefore if we treat it with punishment, then we're gonna deter. It's gonna be a deterrent for us to punish addiction. The science that we have now makes us understand that this would be the same thing as punishing people with cancer or locking someone up when we find out they've got diabetes. Addiction is a disease, and we need to treat it like a disease, and we need to have a new approach. And by moving the resources upstream, and when I say upstream, because it costs us $41,000 a year to incarcerate someone in our state, through great work by the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and some forward-looking folks, and partnering with the executive branch. Last year, $7 million was moved through part of this Justice Reinvestment Act to move correction budget dollars upstream towards intervening before we start spending $41,000 a year. I call $7 million a toe in the door. We've got a foot in the door to start moving dollars upstream. But last year in our state, 77 people in North Dakota died in 2016, so I guess this is a year ago. 77 people died from overdoses in North Dakota. In the last decade, as we kept pursuing a path of punishment, we spent $260 million as a state, $260 million as a state to build new jails at the city, county, and state level. Do you know how much the budget is for prevention? in this biennium's human services budget? $100,000. $100,000. We spent $260 million over a decade building jails, and that's just to build the building. Then it costs us $41,000 to put the person in there. And if the person is in there for a nonviolent, addiction-related crime, it's not tough on crime. This is tough on taxpayers, and it's tough on communities, and it's tough on families. We have to redirect the spending dollars to someplace else, and it's created a system overload across our system. And jail time, without rehab is not a cure for addiction. When we take a look at the continuum of care, we need to be working on solutions across prevention, early intervention, treatment, and recovery. And the vast dollars that are spent by insurance companies and by the federal government and by federal insurance program go into treatment. And treatment is really, really important. But even in the area of treatment, if we think that we can treat a chronic, progressive disease, which if untreated ultimately becomes fatal, that's the disease of addiction, chronic, progressive, and if untreated, ultimately fatal. If we think we can treat that with 28 days, that's like saying, hey, you got diabetes, here's 28 days of insulin. After that, good luck. We're treating a chronic disease with acute solutions. 28 days is an acute solution. That's the way insurance companies and many think about that. So we have to figure out a way to think differently about that, and we have to figure out a way to get more effective at treatment. We have to figure out ways to free up dollars from other things. We have to figure out ways to drive the dollars up so we can get upstream, because prevention, a dollar spent on prevention is the most effective dollar that we can spend. And I know that some people, again, culturally and socially, may have a view about prevention. People may think that prevention is billboards and it's advertising campaigns and it's T-shirts and it's buttons or jingles or something like that. That somehow we run out and sprinkle this on some high school kids and somehow we're going to change their behaviors. Yeah, I got teenagers. You guys, I know. I mean, stuff doesn't work. But there is a lot of things going on, and we're going to hear about some of those things today. The new prevention, which we all need to learn about today. Prevention is data-driven. It's about measuring outcomes. Prevention is rooted in science. It's supported by decades of evidence. We can become smarter about how we deliver dollars against prevention, and as we do, then we can increase the funding that goes against that. But as a state, we have to be committed across all areas of the continuum of care. And one thing we're very fortunate about is that on one of these continuums, the recovery piece of the continuum, is that we have a person in our state who is making an incredible difference in people's lives. We are so fortunate to have our First Lady driving this issue. And let me tell you about the impact that she's having, not just in North Dakota, because I've seen it. I've been with her when I've seen her touch the lives of citizens in our state. But she is also, this is a year ago, she was not sharing with people that she was in recovery. She took the step from recovering in silence to being courageous and sharing about her path to recovery. And that has not only earned her the respect of our people in our state, but not once, not twice, not 3 times, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about her, 3 times. She's been invited to the White House in the last 12 months, related to this, 2 of these for this topic, related to what we're doing nationally and federally related to the opioid crisis. And the 3rd time, she was invited to be on a panel of leading women from around the country who are working on some of the most important issues facing our country. So she's representing our state in an incredible way. I had an opportunity on a separate trip when I was in D.C. to see her last year. She was invited last September to be one of the keynoters at the National Faces and Voices of Recovery event. The speaker before her was the National Drug Czar. He was fantastic. She told her story and got a standing ovation. And And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to get a chance to get back to DC with her, where she's going to be honored by the National Organization on Advocacy related to Addiction, where she's receiving one of 6 national awards. They're giving an award for each of the pillars of the recovery, and then also one for the judicial system and one for law enforcement. But she's receiving the National Pillar of Excellence Award for recovery. So First Lady Catherine Helgus, come on up.
Make it awkward, honey. Make it awkward. Wow. Well, I just have to say, it's so cool to see all of you here today. I mean, you know, I'm so grateful in so many ways, but I keep saying that we can be a state that's a leader in how we are facing and addressing addiction in our state, and we already are leading. We're leading because we're doing this conference today and because we're doing Recovery Reinvented. So I just want to say, let's just congratulate all of you here and all of us, because we're already becoming leaders in this important topic. So I'm just really grateful on a lot of levels. Never thought I would be First Lady of anything, and here I am today. And a door opened in my life, and I started talking about my recovery, and it's really become something that is very special and a path I never thought I would ever take in my life. And so I'm really grateful for that. But I would not be here today if not for my recovery. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I'm a face and voice of recovery, and I'm so grateful for that. And what about this guy? I mean, seriously, I couldn't have a better partner, better advocate, better supporter. I'm just so grateful, better friend. I mean, it's just so awesome to be on this journey with you. So thank you for all your support. So this role that I have is now, galvanized me to what I hope will be a lifetime of advocacy. Advocating for those people who are still suffering from the impacts and the devastation of this disease. But what's really important is that, we all come to a mutual understanding that addiction is a chronic brain disease, and it's not a moral failing. If we just start there, if we just get that message out, and people have that common understanding, that'll be huge progress. All of you today can play a role in helping us eliminate the shame and stigma that's associated with the chronic disease of addiction. Stigma builds walls instead of building bridges. It's socially constructed, based in fear, and usually contains inaccurate information, like, addiction is a moral failing or a character defect. What all of you can do is just start talking about how your lives are impacted by addiction. If you're in recovery, I just encourage you to start talking about it. You'll find a new freedom, really. You'll find a freedom in just talking about it. And before you know it, you'll be helping so many people. If you're the caregiver of someone, I just had a woman come up to me today who said her son is in recovery, and she's just eliminating stigma just by talking to me about it. So just talking about it will help normalize the conversation around the chronic brain disease of addiction. And we can just, if we normalize it, people won't be afraid, and people who need treatment will reach out for help. How many of you, when you go to a rodeo and you see a cowboy wearing a pink shirt,
How many of you know exactly why that bull rider or cowboy is wearing a pink shirt? So we know why, because pink has become the national symbol for breast cancer. Well, we need to create the same level of public awareness and advocacy for the disease of addiction. So that's my goal. So I'm grateful for that opportunity to be working on that. So I'm really excited because, as Jenny mentioned, last fall we had our first ever Recovery Reinvented. A lot of you were probably there. Thank you for attending that. We're going to have another Recovery Reinvented this fall in Fargo on September 5th. So we invite all of you to join us. The conference this fall, Recovery Reinvented, we'll be focusing on the science of the chronic brain disease of addiction, how this disease can hijack your brain and lead you on down paths to make decisions that you would not normally make. When people say, why can't you just do the right thing? Why can't you just make the right choices? It's because this disease hijacks your ability to make the right choices. So we'll talk more about that. Because if we can, again, really reach a common understanding about the chronic brain disease, that will be huge in helping to help people that are still struggling. And then the other thing that we're going to talk a lot about is how do we build more recovery support in our communities, and what are the various ways that we can do that. So we've got a lot of national experts coming in, we've got local and state experts, and so it's going to be great. So I hope everyone will join us for that. We'll be sending out Save the Date. Well, there's a Save the Date, but we'll be sending out more information about how to register soon. And then we also had this really cool thing happen. I suppose, do you want to talk at any point here, or should I just keep going? Okay, all right.
You're doing amazing. You're great.
I'll just let you know when it's your turn. Okay. So, anyway, so the governor, by historic executive order, created this cool thing called the Office of Recovery Reinvented. So that's historic because no state has ever done that. And in North Dakota, we've never created, by executive order, an office, from what I understand. So that's super cool. But it also shows how dedicated and committed we are to this topic. And along with that comes an advisory council that we've created of people from various backgrounds that are going to be able to help us create strategy and execute on how we can eliminate shame and stigma in our state. So at Recovery Reinvented 2017, we announced a competition that we call the Innovate Recovery Competition. So I have an update on what we're doing with that competition today. We are actually now accepting proposals for the first ever Innovate Recovery Competition. So, I'm sorry to have to tell you, but you can't actually apply for this competition because you're not eligible. But I think your idea is good. We'll talk more about that later. So, why don't you announce what the award is?
Well, this isn't just a competition, because sometimes with a competition you get like a little piece of paper that says you won.
Right.
You do something. But this competition, the Innovate Recovery Competition, there's going to be prizes, and the winner will receive up to $50,000 for their prize for a new strategy on recovery.
This competition, with this competition, we're really asking for people to, submit their creative ideas around recovery to help us fill the gaps for what we need in our state. And right now, we've got a lot of gaps. From treatment to recovery, there's gaps that we need to fill around sober living. We're working on creating recovery community organizations, but some states like Massachusetts have had RCOs for 25 years. And so we need to get that ball rolling. We need to create opportunities for a workforce shortage of people working in the recovery area. We could use more peer-to-peer support. We need more solutions that'll reach our rural communities youth engagement. So these are just some areas that I'm just throwing out there, but I'm sure there's a lot of areas that we haven't even envisioned yet that people will be really creative and submit great ideas.
So when you have your great idea, and again, it can be very broad. We're looking for innovative new approaches. So if you think, hey, this is a crazy idea, probably a good one to submit because we're looking for new stuff. But when you can, you get a chance to, if you want more details around the Innovate Recovery Competition, it's easy. Go to the website, recoveryreinvented.com, for the details on the event and then how to apply or submit your application for the award. And the competition starts now. As of today, it's starting now. So, and then we're going to announce the winners of those up to $50,000 prizes at Recovery Reinvented in September at Fargo at Recovery Reinvented.
So, it takes creativity, commitment, and collaboration to identify solutions in our communities to strengthen recovery and create a brighter future for all our North Dakota families. And so I know there's a lot of really smart, creative people out there, and we really want to help you, with this great idea. So please go ahead and submit your ideas, and we'll support you with up to $50,000 to get that idea rolling. So as you can see, we're taking a lot of action around recovery. And I'm really grateful that we have that opportunity. We'll look forward to doing more this fall at Recovery Reinvented.
And again, thanks to everybody in this room and across the state, and thanks to the First Lady for all the amazing work that's going on as we reinvent recovery. But today, of course, you're all here and across the state listening in because this is a day for prevention. If you remember that continuum of care. So we're going to really focus on the front end for the rest of the day, that prevention thing. And let's kick off that journey by taking a look at what is prevention.
So what is prevention? Let's talk about it. Here's a quick story to get us started. There's an often told parable about a couple named John and Amy fishing along the banks of a river. Suddenly they see a woman drowning in the water. They jump in the water and pull her out. After pulling her ashore, they notice another person in the river in need of help. Before long, the river is filled with drowning people, and John runs to find help. After several hours, everyone is exhausted and defeated because they couldn't save everybody. Then, Amy starts to walk upstream. John asks her, "Where are you going?" Amy replies, "I'm going upstream to see why so many people keep falling into the river." As it turns out, the bridge leading across the river upstream has a hole through which people are falling. Amy realizes that fixing the hole in the bridge will prevent many people from ever falling into the river in the first place. So that's how prevention works. It's moving upstream to identify and fix the problem so people don't fall into the river. It's preventing problems before they occur by creating an environment that promotes health and well-being.
Great little video. Thank you, Health. That's where to go. Very fun. So everybody here gets this simple but important concept. Prevention is a proactive approach where we prevent solutions before they even occur. And it also, if we think about this at a community level, whether it's our work on Main Street with building healthy, vibrant communities, whether we think about it as health organizations, whether we think about it as communities in schools, this is about creating an environment that promotes the health and well-being of everybody in it. And we know that we can decrease consequences. These are expensive consequences, they're devastating consequences, and sometimes they're fatal consequences, and we can do that by investing more in prevention. And I think the reason why this is naturally hard, because as a society and as a human culture and here in America, we all see in the paper every day and read the stories of heroic actions of people, in this case, that might have, jumped in the river to save a life. And we all love heroes in America, and very seldom do we see someone who's getting an award for fixing the hole in the bridge. And so in some ways, this has got to be work that's got to be done out of the understanding that it's better to stop a crisis than jump in and be a hero in the middle of one. But we have to also start figuring out how do we identify all those heroes that are out there that are fixing the holes in the bridges. And I think the other reason why we have to do this is because at a time of scarce resources, which is the case, is that we've got to figure out a way to pursue the most cost-effective ways of doing this. There have been a number of studies. This is the latest one from the Surgeon General, but it says for every dollar invested in prevention, you can save $64 on the tail end of that continuum. $1 up front could save 64 on the back end. This is why we have got to push dollars upstream. And it's not just about the dollars, but that helps when we're having a discussion about budgeting, is that it's cost effective, but it's also about the quality of life. It's about preventing the devastation of our families and our communities and our schools and our organizations, and it is about saving lives. But we've got some serious work to do on this. But there has been some good success in our state, and there have been some indications that the prevention work that's been done in the past is working, but we need to do more of it. In the past 18 years, the percentage of high school students who report current alcohol use has fallen from 60.6% to 29.1%. That's almost in half, and that's a nice little line running straight down. People know that I love data. I also am pretty challenging on whether the data is good. This data is from the Youth Risk Behavior Study survey, and this has been consistently done with a consistent number of students across consistent geographies, a consistent month of the year for a long period of time. Everybody that looks at this data feels that this data they have a high degree of confidence in this data, so this would tell us this is a great thing. It's a great thing that we cut this in half. It would also tell us this is awful that we have 30% of high school students that have been drinking in the last month. Okay, I don't think 30% of the parents of high school students in this state know that their kids have been drinking, and this is the challenge. I mean, when you guys were teenagers, did your parents know what you're up to? I don't think so. And I'm a parent, and I've had a few surprises, but I think that the point is here is that we have to figure out a way, when we look at data like this, we have to figure out a way across, again, all of these initiatives, those 5 strategic initiatives. One thing that's missing on all 5 of the strategic initiatives is youth engagement. When we talk about workforce development and how to build a healthy, vibrant community, and I go to a community and everybody that's sitting in the meeting is, over 50 or over 60, and I go, what do the high school kids think about this town? We're not so sure. Well, let's ask them, because they're all leaving. When we're trying to come up with these kinds of approaches, we've got to engage the students that are in the middle of it. That's why, like the First Lady was the other day, was at right here at Bismarck Century High School. She came back. She's been studying this thing hard. She's traveled to 5 states. Met with 5 different governors and their staffs on her own time to learn about this stuff. And she went and met with some students for 90 minutes and came back and learned a bunch of stuff that she hadn't learned on any of those journeys, because the students opened up to her about what's really going on in their school and what the environment is that they're dealing with right here in Bismarck. So we've got to get some engagement. We can love the trend line down, but we have to sort of say, hey, this is a bad trend, because we also know that alcohol use on teenage brains affects brain development, and it can lead to higher chance of being addicted later in life. Delaying the first drink is an effective prevention strategy. Here's one that ought to really terrify us. North Dakota high school students who had their first drink of alcohol before age 13. Before age 13, 14%. We're talking junior high kids doing this, and it's bumped up a little bit from 16 to 17. Again, trend line going the right direction. Prevention's work. We're driving it in half, but we still have some work to do to get this done. And then I would say on the other piece, which is again compared to national averages, North Dakota fares well, but wow, North Dakota ranks much higher than the national average on excessive drinking, alcohol-related motor vehicle crash deaths. That's not good. And And I just want to drive this point home again. Prevention works, but we have definitely got some work to do. There's been a lot of talk about the opioid crisis, and one of the things that we need to pay attention to here, because opioids is a super important issue. It's entering our communities in different ways, because it's entering, many times it's beginning through a prescription from a doctor. Could be from a prescription to a doctor to a high school athlete who had knee surgery that becomes addicted. It could be an adult, could be a parent. But it's now people are starting to understand the disease of addiction. It doesn't care about your zip code. It doesn't care about your income levels. It doesn't care about your marital status. It can affect anyone, anytime, any place. And it's grabbing headlines, it's grabbing attention, and that's fantastic that it is. This is just Cass County right here. 31 opioid deaths in 2016. That brown line, alcohol-related deaths. We have so normalized the idea that alcohol, that the attention getting thing in our state is now the thing with the lower numbers. So part of why I bring this up is because we have to understand that we still have huge issues relative to alcohol as a progressively chronic and ultimately fatal disease as well. We have, big areas for opportunity as well, but this is overdose deaths for the whole state, not just for Cass County. But, trend line, this thing is going up. We know that sometimes trends get to North Dakota later, and in meeting with other governors, like when Catherine met with Chris Christie in New Jersey, we've talked to Larry Hogan in Maryland, Charlie Baker in Massachusetts, Doug Ducey in Arizona. Maryland had 2,000 overdose deaths last year. 2,000. We want to see this number start going down, not going up. Other areas for opportunity. I love it when North Dakota gets named to be the number one this, the number one that. We got to not think it's cool when we get named the drunkest state in the nation. I mean, it might even be presented as a chuckle. We laugh about it. College kids will be college kids. But, this is a list that we'd like to not be on. And part of this goes back to not only prevention, but part of it is actually building communities, investing in communities, so that there's actually activities for things to do for kids that are 20 and under. When we've been doing these Main Street initiatives, if we're out in some Class B community, and then we ask the high school kids, what is there to do in this town? If you're 18 and under, the list sometimes is pretty short. Maybe if you like hunting and fishing, you could be okay, but if you're not, it's a pretty short list. You get to the places, our big cities like Grand Forks. We were in a meeting and we got a chance to listen to all the adults tell us about all the amazing things going on in Grand Forks, and we had students there from UND, and we said, what is there to do in this town if you're under 21? If you're 18, 19, or 20 and going to college? And they kind of looked at each other, and they didn't want to say out loud in front of a bunch of adults, drink, but that was their answer. I mean, that's, what do you do? And so we have to figure out a way. We have to be proactive. We have to engage. We got to do surveys. We got to talk. We got to do focus groups, and we've got to build communities that if you're under the age of 21, that there are things to do. And that's one of the ways we can attack this. But on the other area for opportunity, we have launched Vision Zero. We've launched this with our Department of Transportation, Public Health, the Highway Patrol, local communities. We have a goal to be the first state in the nation where we would have 0 highway traffic fatalities in a year. And you might say, well, that's impossible. That'll never happen. Never happen. I would just ask each one of you, what's the appropriate number of highway deaths for your community, for your family, for your church, for your organization? Would one be okay? 1 death a year? I mean, that be acceptable to you? I don't think so. I mean, the number has to be 0. There is no other number than 0. And yet, every year we lose, sometimes 100, a little more than 100, whatever, 100 people a year in and year out. For 30, 40 years, we lose all these people. And again, we just take it as being American. This is one of the things. But every 7 days, there's an alcohol-related death crash in North Dakota. We can do better than this. This is one of the reasons why prevention can matter. And anyway, Vision Zero. To give you a ray of hope, Montana also has a Vision Zero. Other states have these Vision Zero efforts. Montana reported their first. They went 30 days here during February and March. They went 30 days in a state that's got more people, more highway road miles, more mountain passes, and just as many blizzards as we do. They went 30 days without a death on the roads in Montana as their first milestone. I want to see when we can get to our first 30 days, then we're going to get to 60. See if we can make it happen. But that's part of the work, the important work that we're doing here today. Number one, North Dakota, just like Drunk State, we're number one in the country in terms of alcohol-related driving deaths. 46.7%, nearly 50% of the highway deaths in our state are alcohol-related. The national average is down to 28. So again, we got some work to do. You guys are all here. It's fantastic. We got people dialing in from all over the state. We're going to talk today about solutions. We're going to talk about optimism. We're going to talk about programs that work. We're going to hear from some amazing speakers. But this is not just an individual problem. Prevention is a community problem that requires a community solution. And we have an opportunity working together. It's so fantastic that we've got this community here and across the state, one big community in North Dakota. We're nimble, we're quick, we're well educated, we're smart, we can change directions. North Dakota has a chance to move from the bottom of these lists we can move from worst to best quickly. That's the good news about our state. We can do that. And we can do that by building grassroots movements where we can transform lives, and each of you can play a role. It's happening already. You saw the progress we're making in prevention, but we know we can do more, and you can play a big part. Let's take a look at how community solutions can help make us work. Thank you for being here. Have a fantastic day.
One thing that we have found in the past year or so is that the substance use among our youth is high. So we thought as a community, locally, how do we address that here?
We have a problem with underage drinking in general, but we also have a problem with the community's feeling that alcohol is a part of most community events.
Almost 30% receive their alcohol from their parents. About 36% receive it from someone 21 and over, and about 22% receive it from someone under 21.
I would like to see, ultimate goal is things going on that are alcohol-free that the youth can attend and enjoy.
When the adults put on or do any kind of activities or have any kind of trainings, we get minimal attendance. And so we have a local Standing Rock Youth Council, and they've done a number of events, and the turnout has been amazing.
Anything that we can think of to get the information out there, and working with coalitions.
We had youth at the table. We asked them what they see among their peers, what are youth doing, and one thing that we found out is they didn't feel like their opinions are valued in our community.
Strategic partnerships are going to be the most important thing. A lot of effort can go into coalition building. That's definitely helpful when you're trying to move the work forward. So getting the right people to the table at the right time.
Well, we have our coalition, and among our coalition we have great members from all areas such as healthcare, the hospital, our public health, our religious ministries, our police departments, our sheriff's department.
That, I would say, is probably the biggest piece of this coalition, is we're finding out what's working where and how can we replicate it.
And if you don't have a coalition, start one. You'd be surprised who would come to the table and be willing to volunteer and provide knowledge and their own information to help you move forward.
But it definitely takes time, persistence, and collaboration to come together to make that change.
That is fantastic. So thank you again, Governor and First Lady. That was a great way to kick off the morning. I didn't get to introduce the First Lady, but I will tell you a secret. She's even more fun than the governor. So with that, awesome video, because that is an awesome segue into our next speaker. That video is all about community and the real people that care in North Dakota. So next up, we have Rodney. And Rodney, super smart, knows a lot, done a ton of research. He can tell you about all of that. But what I love about Rodney is when I asked him what of all the things he's done, because there's a lot, what is he most proud of? And he said it was working with the real people in the real communities and seeing the impact. And that's perfect. That is what we are. That is what North Dakota is. Real people doing real work in real communities, and that's awesome. So, Rodney, welcome to North Dakota.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have, you can hear me now? Thank you so much for having me in North Dakota. I live in Laramie, Wyoming. It's at 7,200 feet, and I travel a lot. And one of the things I like about traveling is that it doesn't matter where I go from Laramie, Wyoming, it's warmer. Until yesterday. So they sent me an email. The team here that put this together sent me an email, and they said, oh, could you come say something, like do something crazy, like 20 minutes, something fun, makes people think, whatever. And I was like, oh, I'd love to. The email did not say, by the way, you will be following the coolest, most popular, most dynamic governor and first lady in America. Thank you so much for that. No pressure. So I'm going to actually talk about politics a little bit. So I don't know. I may be leaving today like with an armed escort out because I don't even know what party the governor belongs to. And I heard most of you don't either. Sorry. I want to talk today about the value of prevention and how it could save us all. No small thing. But I think it's gonna really segue nicely from what you heard the governor talking about. And I want to start with the story of Joseph Meister. He was a small boy, 9 years old, living outside of Paris, France, when he was attacked by a rabid dog. So the thing about dying from rabies is it's really awful, right? So if you can imagine a death that is painful, where you lose your mind, and it takes a long time to die, and you lay there and there's nothing you can do, that would be dying from rabies. But the thing that makes it really awful is that when you're bit by a rabid animal and you get rabies and die, it doesn't start for 3 or 4 weeks. So you need to spend a month of your life knowing you're going to die this horrible death, but feeling okay, right? And so Joseph Meister, when he was bit by a rabid dog at 9, his mother did what any loving mother would do. She wanted to save him, and all she knew that she could do was take him to the greatest scientist she'd ever heard of, and his name was Louis Pasteur in Paris. And he went there, and Pasteur had been taking the rabies virus and growing it in the spine of rabbits and then deactivating it. And so even though it would have been costly with like the Royal Academy of Sciences and stuff because it was experimenting on humans, Pasteur used these deactivated viruses, gave them to Joseph Meister, and saved his life. And so Meister became the first person inoculated against the rabies virus, and he lived until 1940. And even though Pasteur only lived for another 10 years or so, Meister spent his entire life as a caretaker of the Pasteur Institute, right? And that's the power of prevention, right? This boy would have died. Within a year, Pasteur had saved a shepherd who had protected a bunch of young children from a rabid animal. And then within a few years, thousands of people in Paris alone were being vaccinated against rabies, right? And so while vaccines aren't the topic of today, the lesson is there, how valuable it can be even to just an individual, but also to society to do prevention. So I want to talk a little bit about that value. In particular, what you see here is a trend of past month alcohol use in Wyoming. It's very similar to North Dakota. We don't start quite as high as you, but we've gone about as low. And what we wanted to do in Wyoming, first of all, was answer this question that lots of governors have, which is, how much do substances cost? So I had economists in 2012, they did a study of 2010 data to say, what does alcohol, tobacco, other drugs cost Wyoming? And so I'm going to give you this. As a society, alcohol costs Wyoming $843 million a year, right? That's in like criminal justice, crime, incarceration, death, drunk driving, lost wages. It was actually a fairly conservative estimate. And we did that. But we also knew that prevention had been working. And in fact, if we were just to trend out what happened in Wyoming without doing any prevention, our trend would just continue around 53%, right? But Wyoming was kind of an experiment in that we didn't have prevention for underage drinking before 2001. There really wasn't anything. After that, we went to the best prevention we knew how, just like you guys are, and we saw this turn down. Now, that turn down is similar in North Dakota. It's also similar in the United States, and I'm fond of saying to people, we both benefited from national change and contributed to that national change, right? And the thing about that is that difference is about 40%, right? And so someone came to me at the state, came and said, can you tell us, what's that worth? I said, whoa, that's a big question. So I went back to my economist and I said, do you think we could figure out what that change is worth in terms of dollars? And they worked for a long time. They worked with WISIP in Olympia, Washington, and some other places. And what they found is that because of that prevention, looking at the literature, there were 389 12th graders in the state of Wyoming who graduated high school in 2014 that will not have an alcohol use disorder that would have had one. And that number, that's worth $122 million, right? So prevention is really valuable if you can do it, right? So now I want to turn to a different problem, and this is where it gets a little sketchy. This is the federal budget deficit since 1950, all right? We continue to spend more money, and I had an economist friend who once said, I was going to go do a presentation on public budgeting, and he said, whatever you do, don't tell people it's like your checkbook. But I'm like, it is kind of like my checkbook, right? What this represents isn't investment in national parks or roads or federal buildings. This is when you're spending more money every month than you bring in, right? And the deficits grow, and they come and go. And I'm going to just overlay something on this, which is whether there was a Republican or Democratic president, right? And they both do it. And since 1950, the deficits have bounced around. You see a little dip at the end of the Clinton years, which is probably due to the huge internet boom, right? Here's another problem. This is the federal, wait, I'm going to go back a second. This is the federal debt. So this is the credit card bill that is accumulating because you keep buying groceries with your credit card, right? This is the federal debt. And I'm going to, again, overlay the presidency. There's a couple of stories here. And I know that if there's an economist in the audience, they're not going to believe my stories, but there are a couple of stories here. The first one is that I really, truly believe that presidents think they have a lot more control over the economy than they do, right? Presidents want to have control over that economy, but deficit and debt is really driven by how much money you're bringing in versus how much money is going out, right? The other story here is that over the last 70 years, that's what's predicted here, both political parties spend money. They just prioritize what they're spending money on, right? Some people want to spend money on more military. Some people want to have everybody have health care. Some people want to cut taxes. Some people want to raise taxes, right? But what has happened over a long time is that we continue to spend more than we have, right? And that keeps growing. And generally, economists think there are two solutions to that. The first one is something called Keynesian economics, right? Think FDR and the New Deal, right? You lower interest rates, you invest in government infrastructure, you spend more money. So when you go back to this picture, that tall spike right there, that's President Obama's stimulus package, right? Another way they think of fixing this problem is by lowering taxes, doing less regulation, stimulating the economy, right? And then you bring in more money. So your paycheck gets bigger, and then you can pay off your credit cards, right? That explains the recent prediction of deficits and debt. So in general, if I'm going to like really, really simplify this whole thing, it's about spending or cutting, right? But this is the problem. There's another story here. This story. And the story is that as Americans, all of us and everybody else, we need, want, and expect our government to do more for us, right? Now, we are fond of saying, like, oh, like, I need my health care, but I don't think, like, those people getting the welfare check deserves it, or I want the government, I want military to be bigger, but I don't think, like, we are self-interested people. We would like the government to do more for what we care about. The problem is that we're doing so much, right? And everybody really needs more and wants more and expects more from their government. And so budgets grow, right? So I'm not being escorted out yet, so I'm gonna keep going. That's the other story, right? And this is the problem, is we can't spend and cut our way out of that, right? So let me talk about another thing we could do. Benjamin Franklin, when he wrote An Ounce of Prevention is actually worth a pound of cure, what he actually wrote is, in the first place, is An Ounce of Prevention is worth a pound of cure. I would advise him to take care of how they suffer living in coals, et cetera, et cetera. He was writing about not letting your house burn down. That really is what he was writing about. Because, and you may want, like, to, you know, it's bad to jump out the window. That was his message. Don't jump out the window. Like, if you can keep the coals from burning the house down, you won't have to jump out. That was what he was talking about, right? And what he was saying is that $1 worth of taking your coals out is not going to cost you the $64 for rebuilding your house. He was talking about that. So I just want to talk about firefighters for a second. Are there any first responders in the room? Because you could get a round of, oh wait, you are. Yeah? Round of applause, right? Since 1922, we have been having Fire Prevention Week in America, right? This is the thing. I will bet right now there's nothing on fire. There are no buildings on fire in Bismarck. There are no houses on fire. In fact, I'd probably bet there won't be one tomorrow either. And you know why? Because our first responders, our firefighters, they spend their days preventing that from happening. Talk to any firefighter. Their main job is prevention, right? That's why they've been having, firefighters have been having Prevention Week since 1922, right? And this is the thing, fire prevention works. These are two charts that are just like the last 10 years of data or so for US fires in the thousands and the US fire cost in the billions. And those trends look a heck of a lot like the trend that the governor put up of underage drinking in North Dakota, right? Fire prevention has been working for nearly 100 years, right? And this is what we do. We have policies that codify what has to happen when you build a building. We put sprinkler systems. If a fire started in this building right now, sprinklers would go on. I'll bet you anything, if a fire started, we would all get out safely, right? And then we teach prevention, we do prevention, we build with prevention, we make prevention policies, all for fires because we know how dangerous that is, right? And we know that fire prevention works. You know what else works? Substance abuse prevention. These are national trends of underage drinking, past 30 days, alcohol use, and cigarette use. And we know it's going down. And are those too high? Yes. Right? Is a third of high school students drinking alcohol too high? Absolutely. Way better than 50 or 60%, right? But we know over a long time we've made huge changes, especially in the youngest generations of people, I do this keynote presentation on millennials, which is a whole other story, but I'll tell you, one of the things that millennials have done, and I know that you guys are like, oh, thinking millennials, are there millennials here today? Do I have to give them a trophy when they leave? Really sorry for all of you young people. And there are millennials, and just let me tell you, I was in Boulder, Colorado doing a presentation a couple weeks ago, and there was a millennial, and I said, you know, maybe it's time for you to take over. I'm not sure our generations have done a good job. Like, maybe you should just start taking over. And she goes, oh, don't worry, we are. Anyway, this generation, these young people, their rebellion has been to behave better than us. And they are. And it keeps going down, and it's great. Prevention works. So I want to show you a little bit. Remember when I talked about the cost of alcohol in Wyoming? It was $843 million. That year in Wyoming, we spent $36 million on treatment. And when you add all of our federal discretionary grants and all of our state money and everything together, we spent $7 million on prevention. Right? And we have less than that now because of budget crises in the state of Wyoming, right? So this is what I want to say to you today as we are doing this. What if we increase the prevention we were doing? What if we spent as much or more time preventing war as we do preparing for war? What if we spent as much or more preventing addiction, preventing youth underage drinking, youth opioid use, as we spent treating it? If we moved upstream like that, we could have a huge impact, right? So I have this simple suggestion for all of you. I think it's the job of every elected official, every state employee, every local, every federal employee, anybody who works in government or nonprofits, to first consider how they can prevent everybody from needing them to do that work, right? And if we had that mindset, things could change dramatically. Now, it's not going to change in a 2-year election cycle, but we may be able to get out of the notion of cutting and spending away our problems, right? Because you can't cut and spend away the problems, but you could prevent away the problems, right? Joseph Meister, in 1940, he died a tragic death. But there is a story of his death that is untrue, and so I'm going to tell it to you, because it's not true. The story is the Nazis came, and Meister, rather than letting him get to Pasteur's crypt, stood in front of the gate and said, "You won't get in here." And it actually didn't turn out, and if you want to know the tragic end of Joseph Meister, you can meet me in the hall. It didn't turn out that way. It wasn't true, but it's a great story about a kid who was saved because of prevention. And I think we all need to be Joseph Meister, standing in front of the gate of prevention and push back and say we need to prevent these things. Because until we start investing in prevention big like that, only then will we start counting and weighing our problems in ounces rather than pounds. Thank you very much. Have a great day for prevention.
Clicker.
Thank you.
We didn't even practice that. But we did talk about it. Because we promised today would be fun, and we'd give you something to post about, if not content. Speaking of, I did a quick sneak at our social media, and love the comments and the pictures that are coming in from some of our viewing sites. Got to see some of the folks that are taking this in from around the state. So that is great. Keep it up. So there's some great feedback on that feed, so thank you. So Rodney has me completely convinced, yes, all in on prevention. So let's just take a couple minutes and talk about, so what does that look like? What does that mean? What does that feel like? Great segue. Rodney talked about what if. So I am not the science or data guru, but I am a parent, and that question of what if is where I spend many hours of my day, and usually night, thinking about. So let's do a little bit of a what if scenario. So what if we've got that 4th grade girl sitting in her classroom at your local school? Maybe if you're a parent, it's one of your children's friends or it's your neighbor. And all of a sudden, we notice that that 4th grade girl is struggling in school. Maybe she got suspended for something. There was an incident at school, but is experiencing some type of failure at school. Maybe there's also something now happening at home. Maybe there's some conflict between some family members. Mom and dad aren't getting along. Maybe there's a new adult entering the picture that is not getting along with the family. Or mom and dad are having some conflict with the older brother that's in high school. Very real, everyday scenarios. In addition to that, this 4th grade girl might have a grandparent or an aunt and uncle that struggled with alcoholism their whole life. They've seen it, they know it. These are not uncommon scenarios, but what if simply identifying those simple factors for that child is all the data we need to come in and protect and prevent that child from becoming addicted to substances or many other risky behaviors that can be very detrimental for those children. So that is what we call, in the world of prevention, the risk and protective factors. And they happen in a variety of contexts. You've got the individual, where they operate, who they are. We've got the family setting. We've got the work or the school setting. And we've got the community setting. And every single one of these risk and prevention factors or protective factors apply differently in each of these scenarios. I mean, it makes perfect sense. We've got all these factors that indicate a youth, an individual, is at risk. Luckily, we have this other list of protective factors that allow us to get in there, mitigate, combat those at-risk factors. And this is based on all of the science and all of the research that we've heard about so far today and are going to continue to hear about the rest of the day. So things like community connectedness. I'm going to go back one slide. So I talked a little bit about the risk factors, whether it's happening at school, at home, a family history. What's the peer group that our young people are spending their time with? Who are they feeling connected to? Are those peers running into some of these risk factors in their own lives? The great news is that several of these factors that can lead to the at-risk behaviors, and we're not just talking about substance or alcohol abuse right here. We're talking about children at risk for things like premature sexual behavior, teen pregnancy, depression, anxiety, suicide, a variety of kinds of abuse. All of these risk factors and protective factors can help us with youth in all of those scenarios. So here's the good news. There's a lot of overlap between these factors. Whether the risk factors for substance abuse, risk factors for mental illness, there's a lot of overlap. So we can very easily, shouldn't say easily because none of this is easy, but we can target those shared risk factors in the middle with the protective factors that are going to make a difference in the lives of that 4th grade girl and our neighbors and other children in our communities. So things like, how connected are they to their family? Who are the people that they're spending their time with? And the great news is that this isn't just about parents and family. The science shows us that it's individuals feeling connected to any positive role model adult. That means that's every single one of us in this room on the live stream. This isn't just something for parents or school teachers. Being connected to any positive role model adult can inherently reduce the risk for those children. And that's an obvious place where we want to invest and will continue to invest as a state. So one of the ways that we're doing this very specifically in North Dakota, based on this science, the Department of Human Services, a behavioral health team, has invested in parentsleague.org. What this is, it's basically a program, a set of resources that are giving us the tools we need to combat things like underage drinking and other risky behaviors. So I was clicking around on this website last night myself, and there's some awesome things out there. Like, how do you talk about prevention with a kindergartner? I have a kindergartner myself and would not have known how to answer that question. Frankly, hadn't really even thought about it at the age of kindergarten. But there were some awesome resources out there. So this is a great tool that already exists within our community that we want to get into the hands to help make some of this simple for communities to implement. So we mentioned earlier today that we're going to have a lot of great news. We had the announcement earlier today about the $50,000 Innovate Recovery Competition. And this is one of the fun parts of my job. The second exciting announcement we have for today is that the Department of Health is giving mini grants for schools to invest in parentsleague.org. They're going to be accepting applications. They're going to be granting these mini grants to up to 15 schools or school districts to help get them off the ground, investing and using these awesome resources that we have with parentleads.org. So you can learn more about that in the Knowledge Cafe at lunch. So let's hear it for a behavioral health team that is investing in those protective factors to help all the kids across the state. Awesome. So, and that's only announcement number 2. I promise there's much more exciting stuff to come. So, with that, we are going to take, this is at risk to even say this, a super short break. What this is run out there, get your cup of coffee, come right back, because Rodney is not done yet. Rodney actually has a lot more exciting content to share amongst several other speakers. So we're literally talking about a 5-minute break to grab your coffee and come back. And because we've got the live stream and we're being respectful of their time, we are literally starting in 5 minutes. So we'll see you back here in a few minutes.